So late last year, out of pure boredom with no games to play, just wanting something to do, something fun I could do, I installed Resident Evil Remake. Now, if you've had PlayStation Pro for a while, you probably have gotten this game for free. I got this game for free thanks to PlayStation Pro, and I'm pretty sure I got the Resident Evil Zero remake as well, which I've never played Resident Evil Zero before ever in my life. I've never played Resident Evil Zero. I've only played one, two. I only played a little bit of three. I never beat three, actually. I played one, two. I played some of Code Veronica on the original, like the Dreamcast version. I never played the PS2 or GameCube versions. Um, and of course, I've beaten four, five, and I beat part of six. And six is the only one where I didn't stop playing because it got too hard or because I kind of left. I stopped playing. If you stop playing game for a while and you come back, you might be really lost because you're supposed to have memorized the map. That's kind of what happened to me when I played Code Veronica. But when it comes to six, I actually beat the campaign as Wesker's son and Sherry Birkin as an adult woman, or at least like a young adult woman. I beat that campaign. I actually had a good time with it with my little brother. And as we tried to play through Leon's campaign, I was just at that point. I was like, I just can't play this game anymore. Like, it's just not that good. It's so bad. It's so trash. And I know there's a lot of defenders of Resident Evil 6, but I'll have to go into another video really shitting all over that game because while some people say it's not a good Resident Evil game, but it's still a good action game. In my opinion, Resident Evil 6 has no merit. As someone who likes action games and Resident Evil games, I feel like this game fails at both. And it's a passable action game if you're desperate, but saying it's a good action game, that is just baffling to me. I honestly, that is, and this is coming from someone who thinks people are a little bit too hard on Mass Effect 3's combat. Okay, not that they're too hard on the overall game with its, but that's a whole nother can of worms. But what I'm trying to say here is that, oh my gosh, Resident Evil 6 is a mess. And Resident Evil 7 came out, and it was a big return to form that I think a lot of fans were really happy with. Not only that, but newcomers were really intrigued, as it definitely felt like the true next sequel, the true next step for people who played PT and are now left stranded, who will never get to see where PT goes. Resident Evil 7, in a lot of ways, is kind of crazy because it really takes the series in a new direction that people didn't expect, especially since Resident Evil 1, certain characters and certain villains, for example, have been being built up for a long time now. A lot of these characters are very important to the overarching world of the Resident Evil universe. Characters like Chris, Jill, and Leon are all really big figures, with Chris and Jill being former members of STARS, who are now current members of the BSAA, which is kind of like their own version of STARS, which is, not run by Wesker, and, is a lot more honest and does a great job of ridding the world of a zombie menace and trying to stop Umbrella. Leon of Resident Evil 2 and 4 fame, aka the two best games in the franchise and the two games that everyone loves the most, he is a member. He directly works for the government, not so much for the BSAA like our former heroes from the first game, and Jill's also in the third game. These characters those characters are from their own like little private organization that tries to stop zombies. Leon works for the government, and that's why in 4 he is sent to save the president's daughter and not this big hero Chris, because Chris and Leon are on very two different paths. It's something that's really fun about the Resident Evil franchise is that every so often these characters that you've come to love will pop up again in other games. For example, Code Veronica was a big deal because Claire had come back, and a lot of people really liked Resident Evil 3 because it was a return of Jill, but in Raccoon City, which is where the Resident Evil 2 takes place. But it's not just a remake of Resident Evil 2 with Jill as the main character. It's a whole new environments. So it's a lot. It's like, the environment that they are familiar with and a different character that they're familiar with. And it's really cool that it expands upon the Resident Evil lore and expands upon the events of Resident Evil 2, using it with a character from Resident Evil 1. And then again, Code Veronica is a return of Claire, who was in Resident Evil 2 as the female protagonist. And Claire literally has no ties to the government or any organizations or anything. She's literally just a normal ass girl. However, she's the little sister of Chris from Resident Evil 1. So she has ties to the main characters for that reason. But Claire is also a very capable character. She's kind of grown up on the streets and had to learn things the hard way, and she's kind of a biker babe. So like she's pretty badass in her own right. She wears red jean shorts. How much cooler can you be, honestly? Which sadly that's not going to be in the remake. But I think in an alternate costume you can wear her red shorts, but it's not with the original top. It's kind of a weird thing to do. You'd think they would just give her the full-on original outfit. Either way, once I have that costume unlocked, or if it's DLC or whatever, I'm gonna be in that costume. Don't you better believe that. So, and it's just funny that with all these characters who are so important, and then of course in 6 you can actually play as Sherry Birkin, who was the little girl that Claire had to save in Resident Evil 2. Not only was she the little girl in Resident Evil 2, but her dad invented the G virus and had worked with Wesker, he worked for Umbrella. You know, her dad is the final boss of Resident Evil 2. So to see her pop up again in Resident Evil 6 was a really cool moment for me personally, as Resident Evil 2 was, even though I'd watched my older brother beat Resident Evil 1 when I was little, Resident Evil 2 was the game that really got me invested in Resident Evil, because the characters of Leon and Claire really got me invested. Those are the characters I really fell in love with. So seeing her back in 6 was cool, and the other character was the son of Wesker, who I don't exactly remember if he was immune because of Wesker's experimentations, or if it was just because he has Wesker's blood in him or something like that. Either way, he's a very strong dude. He's, very much so a descendant of Wesker, and he's actually a very likable and cool character. And it was by far the best campaign of that game, which I could barely even touch the other ones. Especially considering that you have to replay the same levels over and over with them. And then you have Resident Evil 7, which really just took a step back and was almost like hitting a reset button on the entire franchise. Resident Evil Revelations also let you play as Jill again, without weird superpowers, which was fun. And Revelations 2 had you playing as Claire for part of it, and had you playing as Barry, of all characters, from the first game, but he was never playable. And that's fun too, the fact you can play as Claire and Barry, which is a fun idea, because those two really have nothing to do with each other. I mean, again, Claire's just kind of like this own girl, who's just about her wits. She just kind of is along for the ride and trying to survive in this universe. But she's kind of become an important person. She just is only important because she has a good, close connection with both Chris and Leon. So Resident Evil 2 Remake is really fun because, for one, Resident Evil was already like hitting the reset button on Resident Evil. And now we're getting a sequel to that Resident Evil, but instead of being a traditional sequel like Resident Evil 8 or something that continues upon the story from Resident Evil 7, they're actually going back, all the way back, hitting the reset button even further, making the game third person again. However, I just want to note, it's very clear if you've played Resident Evil 7 that Resident Evil 2 Remake plays like Resident Evil 7. It's very clear that this game is in the Resident Evil 7 engine, and that's not a bad thing. Another thing to keep in mind is that Resident Evil 7 was a very different kind of Resident Evil. You didn't fight traditional zombies or deal with the T-virus and all that stuff. Umbrella was mentioned in that game, but the family and the creatures you fought were very different from what you would find in a Resident Evil game. And I'm really hoping that the fans of that remake, the fans of Resident Evil 7, this new entry and a very different take on Resident Evil, can enjoy Resident Evil 2 Remake all the same. The fun thing is about this game is that even though it's a third-person shooter, it still very much so plays like Resident Evil 7, very much so. And I think that's a good thing. And this time, though, there's definitely going to be a lot of inspiration from Resident Evil 2. So, taking what they've learned from Resident Evil 7 and then basing it in one of the most beloved games story-wise, one of the games that really set the whole thing off. And I mean, so many games are based in Raccoon City, all the spin-offs, all trying to cash in on that love of Resident Evil 2. And then using the camera style and a gameplay style of Resident Evil 4, which is really beloved. It's like everything that everyone should love about Resident Evil all wrapped up into one. I will say this though, if you are a fan of Resident Evil 4 and 5, this game really does not play like those games at all. In fact, it plays you can move while shooting and you can you can slice your knife while walking, but it's not quite Resident Evil 6 territory where you can do running slide attacks and things like that. It's still a very, very slow game, very slow-paced game. It's a third-person shooter, but don't think Resident Evil 4. I just played the demo tonight because I was really excited for the game, and so this is the first time I played the demo. I already went ahead and pre-ordered the game digitally, and so I'm going to be playing it probably day one, and I'm very excited for it. However, I will say, from playing the demo, I definitely got a lot of vibes from the Resident Evil 1 remake. And what I mean by this is, shooting a zombie in the head ain't going to instantly kill it, and it's also not going to stun him in a reasonable way. In Resident Evil 4, you can stun a zombie, run up, and kick its head off. While in the old Resident Evils, sometimes a good strategy is to just run past a zombie. I actually did that a few times in this game. The fact that it actually invokes that fear in you to where you're like, I really need to save my ammo. The best solution might just to be just to get the fuck away from him and outrun the motherfucker. I mean, they're slow. And the only problem is that sometimes they'll actually gang up on you, and it really creates this terrifying situation where you have to be like, okay, I don't know what to do, because it takes like 3 headshots to make a zombie like stumble, and it takes even more to kill them sometimes. However, that's early on in the game and with the handgun. If you know anything about Resident Evil 2, you know that Claire gets a grenade launcher, and you know that Chris gets custom weapon parts that he can equip to his guns and make them even more badass. So, I'm expecting the game to be a little bit more fun and easier as you progress through the game, but those early moments from the demo are definitely stressful, but stressful in a good way because, hey, you're supposed to be trying to survive here. It's not supposed to be a cakewalk. So, yeah, I like that in this game, but it's a good thing that the game isn't like that the entire time. Progression is key with any game. You don't want the game to become stagnant. You don't want the game to just be the same thing throughout the entire fucking game. That would be awful. So, I really, really, really liked what I played from the demo. I noticed that if you shot a zombie in a certain spot, there's definitely a very visible hole right where the bullet hit. And sometimes if you aim for the head, there's some very visible, like, face scarring and tearing going on, where you're like, oh, I know I'm fucking up this zombie. I know he's fucking hurting. The fact you could see the damage is really nice. Being able to remove limbs is even possible, and I noticed that if you shoot a zombie in the body with a shotgun, you can actually cut their torso clear off. It really does seem like you're fighting enemies with rotting flesh, and yeah, you can really do some amazing damage with these characters. I also really like this knife mechanic. If you have a knife, it's actually durable. This is important because in Resident Evil 4 and 5, I would spam the knife like crazy. By spamming the knife, you would save ammo, and it would look really, really fucking stupid. But me and my brothers would always do it, especially in 5 co-op, and we'd be like, yeah, just gang up on him and stab him over and over and over because we don't want to use our ammo. It's very stupid. Not only does a knife have more than one swinging animation, but it has durability. Eventually it will be broken and dead. But what I really like about it is that if a zombie is attacking you, you can save yourself from taking damage by stabbing it in the neck with a knife. But when you do this, you lose the knife. You have to kill the zombie and grab it back. Now, what's another thing to note in this game is that when you kill a zombie, it's not always exactly dead. Sometimes with one well-placed shot, and I don't know how to trigger this, you can blow a zombie's head into pieces with just a pistol. When this happens, it feels really fucking good. However, it is seemingly random, and I think it's made that way by design. Resident Evil 1 Remake was also like this. And when you didn't do that, you had to dispose of a zombie a different way. If you weren't able to blow its head off, you had to burn the body. So that meant you had to actually gather kerosene and burn it. You had to actually, I'm pretty sure you had to have fuel and gasoline. So you could only burn so many bodies at a time. It was actually a pain in the ass to keep in track of burning the zombies up. However, it made the game really intense. And after all, you shouldn't really play the remake unless you've played the original, but I know people never follow that rule. Um, but either way, yes. And the Resident Evil 2 remake is similar in that way. Zombies get back up after you kill them. If you could return to a room where you fought zombies, there's a high chance those zombies are still in there. Yes, you might have think you killed them, but they're not completely dead. In Resident Evil 2, it was fun because if someone grabbed your legs, Leon and Claire would kick their heads completely off their bodies, which is something that you should be able to do it to a zombie with a rotting neck and rotting flesh. In this game, you really need to have a great weapon equipped to completely finish it off. Seems like the pistol is a weapon that will only kill it temporarily. I'm not exactly sure how it will work quite yet. But you only have to do the temporary kill to get the knife out of the zombie once you've stabbed it in. So I really like that mechanic. There's a lot of... It seems like this game makes you focus way more on your resources than 4 and 5 did. Where in 4 and 5, yes, there were a lot of times where I felt like I needed ammo desperately and I was really in a tough situation. But I also was completely capable of being able to defeat everyone by stabbing them in the leg and then doing a physical attack combo or something like that. There's definitely so many ways to trigger those physical combos. I got really good at it to where I was saving ammo all the time. And I wasn't really aiming for the head a lot of time either. A lot of times I was aiming for the leg so I could do like an uppercut to them or something, or a flip kick or something. So while I definitely love 4 and 5, and those are probably my favorite two games in the franchise, I just want to say that I still really appreciate what they're doing with 2, and I'm glad that they're moving it back to a really slow and horror-based game. I've noticed that I really couldn't see very well. I had to use the flashlight to point where I was going. It definitely seems like Capcom is trying to look at what other people are doing with the horror genre and not be so up their own asses with this game. Capcom, it seems to be really redeeming themselves as kings of gaming, and I'm really appreciating it. It looks to be fucking fantastic. And while the demo forces you to play as Leon, the full game you'll be able to select either Leon or Claire from the very beginning, just like Resident Evil 2. Now, there is the caveat of you can't play in Resident Evil 2. If you pick the game as one character first, you could play as the other character second, and it would change up the story. And obviously, Leon and Claire have different stories already, but what the thing is that their stories change even more if you play their second stories, as in if you beat the game as Leon first or Claire first. This is called Leon and Claire A and Leon and Claire B. You can only play B if you beat the other characters A. So if you want to see all 4 variations of the story, you have to beat the game 4 times. First as Leon and then Claire, and then again as Claire and Leon, or vice versa. And that's kind of crazy and almost asking a lot of the player base. So for this time around, you're going to have to beat the game as Leon and Claire. There's no A and B. It's just Leon and Claire. I think that's fine, because Leon and Claire's stories are already very different enough, and I bet you they're going to make one of the characters feel more like they're taking the B path either way. I think that's what they're going to be doing. And as long as the true ending, or like, the final part of the epilogue is in the game, in there somewhere, whether it be for both their true endings, or whether it be if you have to beat both characters and then you unlock the true ending, or blah blah blah, because normally you would get the expanded upon ending only in the B part of the campaign. So hopefully they do something there with that, and I'm sure it'll be good. Um, and then of course they've already confirmed that you can still play as Hunk and Tofu. Now the thing about Hunk and Tofu is that they're part of like these special bonus games. I'm kind of a I don't think they're going to put in anything along the lines of the Mercenaries mode, even though that started in Resident Evil 3, and Resident Evil 3 played similar to Resident Evil 2. I don't think they're going to be doing that this time around. So it looks like they're going to do the same kind of mode with Hunk and Tofu that was just in Resident Evil 2. I kind of hope that they also make some other new game modes, though. Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube had this great mode where you played as Ada back way in the past, but takes place in like the same location as Resident Evil 4 did. And then in the PS2 version, which came out after the GameCube version, they added in another game mode where you can play through the events of Resident Evil 4 as Ada Wong. And to me, that kind of felt like it kind of felt like it was Leon A, Claire B scenario, but instead of Claire B, it was like Ada. It was like the Leon and then Ada scenarios. So even though the Ada version was a lot shorter and not really, it wasn't even close to the normal Resident Evil 4 experience, it forced you to play as Leon first anyway. But I like that little addition. So I would really appreciate it if there was some kind of game mode where you got to do something more with Ada at the end of the game as well, or something along those lines. You know, there's so many possibilities for what they could do as bonus game modes. So anything would be fun, and with DLC existing today, there's any kind of possibility that could happen. So yeah, I'm very, very, or maybe there's a game mode where once you beat the game, you can play through it all over again, but with a fixed camera angle perspective, just like Resident Evil 2 had back in the past, making it more similar to the Resident Evil Remake series that already exists with Resident Evil and Resident Evil Remake and Resident Evil Zero Remake, which are both just fantastic fucking games, even though I haven't played the Zero Remake yet. Resident Evil 1 Remake was really good. It made me fall in love with the original one all over again, and I really enjoyed the puzzle-solving elements, and experiencing Resident Evil 2, honestly, guys, do not expect it as a modernized take of Resident Evil 2. If you're thinking this will be an easier version of Resident Evil 2, no. Modern doesn't always equal easy. This game is still very, very true to its roots of a puzzle-solving game with lots of locked areas where you have to backtrack later with more keys and stuff like that. That's what it's all about. So this is very much so inspired correctly by Resident Evil 2, and that's why it's such a damn good remake. I really want to see this kind of quality when the Final Fantasy VII Remake happens, but I honestly doubt it, because Resident Evil 2 is seriously taking so much inspiration from the original, but with a new modernized twist to it, which is basically just, hey, we don't want top-down and fixed camera angles with tank controls. Even though they handle that really well in the Resident Evil Remake, but even though it's handled really well in the remake, we don't exactly want that. Again, we want to really have new life, brought into Resident Evil 2, and that's what we're definitely getting with this one. Very much so a combination of everything great that Resident Evil's ever done, and I'm very excited for it. It looks like an impressive game on its own right, and I feel like Capcom, every so often, Resident Evil just knocks it out of the park all over again. And the fact that 7 was so good, so well received, and then the 2 remakes happening, it couldn't be better timing. I feel like Capcom's going to do really well with this one. I feel like it's going to get good reviews. I feel like it's going to get good sales, and everyone's going to be happy. And I hope Japanese game developers are listening to this. Cheap games will not get you money. Okay, fast and lazy games will not get you money. Using nostalgia will not get you money. If you want to make money, you have to make good, excellent games. good, excellent games. And at the end of the day, yes, this is a remake of the most beloved game in the series, but let's not pretend like this game doesn't stand out super well on its own, because the changes it's making are fantastic. And if they did a Resident Evil game like this with a completely different scenario, with different characters and a different story, I would still love it because it's going back to its roots and it feels fresh. So even though it's a remake, it feels very new, and I really, really like it. So I'm very excited for this game. And that's what this video is all about. I hope people want to check it out. The funny thing is, if you've watched my other videos, you probably know I'm very excited for Kingdom Hearts 3, and they come out the same week. So that's not good. I'm literally spending 120 bucks this month. Actually, I'm spending a little bit more because I'm buying the special edition of Kingdom Hearts. And on two games that I'm going to play basically around the same time. There's no way I'm going to be able to beat Resident Evil before Kingdom Hearts comes out. There's just no way. But fuck it, I'm going to try. So wish me luck on that, guys. And I hope you guys check it out. If you have to buy one of them later, cheaper, used, that's totally fine. This is a really weird, conflicting time for these games to both come out, especially as Japanese anime gaming fans probably are very well anticipating both. But either way, I'm getting both, and I probably won't get a single game during February. So, yeah, that's my justification for it, and I will see you guys later. Check out this game. I don't think I'm going to be streaming it or anything, but I don't know. Maybe I will if I'm just playing it for fun. But I'll catch you guys later next time.